Good evening, guys, or good day, whenever it is you guys are watching this. Welcome back to the channel. Let's talk about the news. I'm going to have to be very careful because today we're talking about death. And with that naturally comes a lot of things that could potentially get me in trouble if I don't watch my language in the way I phrase things or the words I use for these delightful topics today. And yes, I know, last week I got you guys all gassed up. We talked about going to the moon. We talked about, Memento, becoming better men. And here I am back into the doom and gloom. Well, let's get through it because I also don't have a lot of memory left and I got to get this knocked out. So, first of all, we have had some... Oh, I'm sorry. If you appreciate the video today, I'd appreciate a like. If you would like to see more of this or you enjoy the other content on my channel, please subscribe. And hey, follow me over on X. I am not particularly active at the moment on X. We have Lent coming up, so I'm trying to shift my focus to and make a little more time for the important things in life, the things that are truly important. So that being faith and family. So, but after Easter, I will be back to my usual business of hot takes and being filled with piss and vinegar and letting everybody know just what I think about everything. Probably also in times that I should just keep my mouth shut. But anyways, the news with all our cheery topics today. Well, there have been a couple of big names that have recently passed, both today and on Sunday. So first is the actor Robert Duvall, who passed away at the age of 95. So he lived a good life. He lived a full life. He passed away on Sunday, February 15th. And he appeared in The Godfather, Apocalypse Now, Secondhand Lions, Open Range, Days of Thunder, and a great number of other films. And can I admit something to you guys? Can I be very honest with you? I got a confession here. So I am over 30 years old now, and I have still never seen The Godfather or Apocalypse Now. And Apocalypse Now is really bad because I was in the military for a time. And that is definitely one of those like required viewing kind of movies. So not only have I been around a time or two at this point, I have also been in particular circles that definitely should have resulted in me seeing these by now. But I did see him in Open Range, and I saw Secondhand Lions when I was very young. It's definitely due for a rewatch. But yeah, I'm definitely sad to see Mr. Duvall go. But just pray that he knew the Lord and that he is in a better place now. And then the next big one is Jesse Jackson, or some might call him the Reverend Jesse Jackson. He was, if you haven't somehow heard of this guy, he was a civil rights activist who's considered a protege of MLK himself, according to Wikipedia. But he actually also served as a politician, sort of. He was what's called a shadow senator, so he was elected to the Senate for the Washington, D.C. area, which means if he's a shadow senator, it means he doesn't have voting ability. He doesn't have voting power. So he sits in there. I think he can speak and give his point of view on things, but he can't vote because it is not a U.S. state. Only official states can vote. But he does represent had represented Washington, D.C. in that capacity. He also was a Baptist minister. He got his MDiv from Chicago Theological Seminary way back in the 60s, and I had to look it up. It's an quote-unquote ecumenical seminary that is affiliated with the United Church of Christ, which is a liberal mainline and has only gotten more liberal as the days have gone on. So I'm not sure that he and I would have agreed on a whole lot, but you know what? I still hope the best for him and his family. He passed away, as of this recording, today, Tuesday, February 17th, at the age of 84. So not a short life, but also not quite as old as Mr. Duvall. Fun facts, he actually ran for president in in 84 and 88. And he was a host on CNN with his own show from 1992 to the year 2000. He was an outspoken critic of police brutality, the Republican Party, and conservative policies. So, again, don't think that he and I would have seen a whole lot eye to eye on a whole lot, but I can certainly respect him as someone of significant influence that left a mark on our country. And even President Trump offered his condolences and compliments and said, I quote, "I knew him well long before becoming president. He was a good man with lots of personality, grit, and street smarts. He was very gregarious, someone who truly loved people." And if you, like anyone, are familiar with Trump's infamous smack talking, that might sound kind of weird coming out of his mouth, but it's not the first person I've heard him who didn't agree with him politically that I heard him actually speak well of. I actually remember him being rather respectful when Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed, and he offered his condolences there as well. So I know he is a lightning rod, but I think President Trump does have a decent bone or two in his body. Anyways, be in prayer for those families. Their losses will certainly be felt. Their families, their friends, their loved ones, even if we disagree with them, still want the best for their families. Next story is we're deploying troops to Nigeria. And no, this is not some kind of new war, at least not how you would think. So I guess we already have a number of officers already on the ground. They are now deploying 200 troops. So this is not a big deployment. And it says, so I got my story from the Military Times and the New York Times. And it says that they will be there to help train Nigerian forces and will not engage in combat. So they're going to be advisors. Sounds like they might help with some targeting. And this is definitely in relation to a lot of the concern lately with some of the terrorist activity, some of the Islamic militant activity that's been going on there. And if you haven't heard, so Nigeria has had a growing Muslim population over a number of years now. And since 2009, on the lower end, the estimates of how many people that have been killed is approaching 53,000, if not exceeded that number. Some estimates have it as high as the 6 digits, if not as high as like 150,000. But I think we can at least confidently say it's been over 50,000 people have lost their lives since the year 2009. And if you are keeping track, if you know anything about political science or how people study war, it seems like kind of an arbitrary number, but I remember back when I was in school, we would talk about things like this. So they generally consider a war something where roughly about 1,000 people a year are losing their lives. That's kind of the difference between, maybe widespread violence versus a true war. And the two groups of particular interest here are Boko Haram and the Islamic State, which those can kind of overlap because the last I recall, Boko Haram is a group that actually pledged allegiance to the Islamic State. And yes, the Islamic State as in ISIS, that ISIS. They have never truly gone away. They have definitely taken some big hits over the years, but they continue to be a nuisance in pockets throughout the world, them and all their friends. And Nigeria is a country in West Africa that has a incredibly dense population. They are generally regarded as one of the countries that has some level of promise to maybe develop into something beyond a lot of the rest of the struggles of the rest of the continent, particularly sub-Saharan Africa. So there's a lot of partnerships with, the United States and other Western countries to kind of help them along in their development. And, but they have had a lot of issues lately where most of the population is down in the south where Lagos, the capital city, is located. And that's where the majority of the Christian population is. But the further north you go, the more Muslim presence there is as well. Particularly in the north, there is a lot of less secure territory where these violent groups run around and cause all sorts of problems. They attack churches, and not just churches. I want to be fair here. They do attack, some of these articles were making a point that it's not just Christians, because there's a big debate over whether or not this amounts to a Christian genocide. I think it is certainly fair to say that Christians are definitely being targeted deliberately, but so are some Muslims. But if you know anything about history, you know that violence amongst different groups of Muslims is also not unheard of. So I don't think... Some people, you got people in either camp here that want to sway this in their favor, in their particular agenda, one way or the other. On the one side, you definitely have people that, I'm admittedly more partial to, that believe this is a genocide. And I think maybe if it's not a full-blown genocide, it's definitely, Christians are definitely being deliberately targeted in order to gain a greater grip on the country for those who are more militantly Islamic-minded. But there are also other Muslim groups that are, or Muslim communities that are being attacked, and they are also losing their lives. So I couldn't find with a quick search whether this is like a Sunni Shia kind of issue going on here or what, but there is a religious aspect to a lot of these attacks. There is a resource aspect over, land and water and whatnot. But that's kind of always been the case. So they kind of want, the left side kind of wants to poo-poo this and just be, it's just another struggle over resources. It's just, religion's not that, it's not, Islam's not really the reason these people are doing what they're doing. Well, both things can be true. It can have a religious aspect to the conflict, and it can also involve a concern for resources and amassing control over greater and greater territories. So in any case, the Trump administration, if you'll remember, dropped a few bombs on Christmas Day, literally, in a place called Sokoto, which is a state in the northern part of the country where there was a militant camp or militant training camp of some sort, and killed a few of them, screwed up some of their infrastructure. And since then, there has been a level of attention that has continued to remain on the country of Nigeria. And so this is, I guess, the Trump administration's next move to try to keep their thumb on the pulse of this situation. So I'm sure if you're pretty anti-war, you're not happy to hear this. But here's the thing, man. These kinds of operations go on all the time. It was very common during the GWOT, where we were all over the place, and it is still common today. There are countries all over the world that we have American troops that act in a supporting, advisory, training role. I don't think this is necessarily a breach of the Trump administration's campaign promise to keep us out of wars. I'm sure by now people probably think that that's long been broken, but how I understood that campaign promise was it was a promise to keep us out of Iraq-type conflicts, of Afghanistan, these nation-building efforts with people who have little to anything in common with us here in the West, certainly have no real interest in a functioning democratic system of government, and are just really we don't share a lot of goals with. So I think those efforts are definitely to be avoided. However, the United States still has to function in the world. We are still the most powerful nation on earth, arguably. And you know what? When you're top dog, sometimes people want a piece of you. So I think these low-level, low-temperature conflicts, especially when we're not the ones doing the fighting, we're just trying to work with partner forces and trying to equip them and encourage them to conduct the fights within their own borders. I don't have an issue with this. I guess, I don't know. I guess make a case if you disagree, why you think this is a waste of our time and resources. I think an isolationist policy is completely not just unrealistic, it's irresponsible. Because like it or not, we're involved in the world. I think you have to be involved in the world to a point to be able to protect yourself, to see the threats before they approach your own shores. So, yeah. Moving on. I've definitely talked about that enough. We have the main story of the day, and that is there has unfortunately been another mass shooting incident. And I hope that I can at least say that without being censored or taken down. I haven't had to deal with that a lot on my channel just yet, but I think that's also because I am such a tiny channel. I'm not known yet, so maybe that will change in time. But unfortunately, there was an event, let's just call it, in the place of Pawtucket, Rhode Island, which is north of the city of Providence. Very interesting. I mean, I know it's a small state, but I'm just not used to seeing things like this coming out of that particular part of the country. This was, and here's another angle to the story. So this happened yesterday on Monday, February 16th. The perpetrator walked into Lynch Arena, which is an indoor skating rink where it appears there was a high school hockey game going on, and opened fire on their own family, killing 2 of their family members and injuring 3 others. So injured 2 of their family members and killed another like family friend or something like that. So, and then I don't, the perp is also no longer alive. So I don't know if, you know, they did themselves in, or if someone took them down. Sorry, I'm trying to be really careful here, or what happened. But the other angle that makes this interesting is this is another perpetrator of a very particular identity in this country that is always the source of a lot of controversy. They were a 56-year-old male to female transitioner and went by, you know, I don't really feel like sharing their name. Regardless of what this person's personal struggles were going on, they decided to enact horrific violence on their own family and the public, and, you know, subjected the public to terror and violence and bloodshed where there should never be any of this. And I hope he's burning in hell. So I hope that God delivers the justice that he is due. Maybe you disagree with me for feeling that way, but I feel this way about every single mass shooter. And interestingly enough, a little interesting note here is that I just want to stress also, it's not because of them being a transitioner. That is not why I feel that way. I feel that way because they are hurting innocent people, and they are clearly sick, clearly crazy, clearly something, and they feel the need instead of, and I don't wish death upon them if it's someone that's going through something, but, you know, they can't just, if they're really intent on removing themselves from the world, I really hate this trend of, you know, I have to go out and cause as much damage on my way out. Why can't you just remove yourself from the equation and just leave people alone? I don't want that either. I want you to get help. I don't want you to condemn yourself to an eternity in hell. But if you're going to go through with it, I hope that that's exactly what you get. It is what it is, man. But anyway, so this person was definitely a disturbed individual. A very interesting case where they began to do this late in their life. They had a number of social media posts apparently in support of Trump and the Trump administration. And it's interesting because normally their social media accounts get taken down when something like this goes on, especially when they're an inconvenient identity. However, this one has been left up, and I can only speculate. You know, this is not any kind of confirmation. I don't know how I would ever have proof of this, but it's just interesting how the one that seems to have the clearest connection to right-wing ideology is the one that's has their social media left up. Compare that to another event, other events, you know, such as the kid that tried to take President Trump out, and how we know almost nothing about him to this day. His presence was completely scrubbed almost immediately, as was Audrey Hale, the Nashville perpetrator. And a lot of her information was, until eventually it was leaked. Details of, you know, her manifesto and her motives and all that were leaked by some patriotic Americans within the police department, I believe it was. Sorry, I'm getting distracted here. So Anyway, so this individual in the Rhode Island incident, very disturbed, had divorced his wife after a number of years of marriage and multiple kids. And God have mercy on these kids. Supposedly I saw a brief clip where someone who's apparently a daughter, a surviving daughter of this, has lost like half her family now, thanks to this absolute psycho. And I can't even imagine what's going through her mind, what's going through how she feels about all this. Those who are injured, the 3 that are injured, are still in the hospital in critical condition. And all this just on the heels of another such event, not on the American side of the border, but on the Canadian side of the border, if you can believe it. They recently had one of their worst mass events, at least in recent history, where in Tumbler Ridge, Canada, British Columbia, so province way out in the west. I don't know the provinces very well, so I heard British Columbia, or British Columbia? Is that where it is? Yeah, British Columbia. I thought that was out east for some reason. It's not. It's way out west. It's where like Vancouver is. Well, there's a town called Tumbler Ridge where an 18-year-old male to female transitioner snapped or whatever was going on, and also took down members of their own family in their own home, and then went to a local high school and hurt a whole lot more people. So that whole event resulted in 9 dead, including the perpetrator, and 27 injured. And that's including everybody. So the 2 back at their home, as well as the high school. And that one, the perp did take themselves out. And I guess on their social media, they had been reposting Audrey Hale videos and posts. So it seemed to have some fascination with that. So why do I highlight that? Why do I keep... Well, because there appears to be, like it or not, a pattern forming where these people are going and conducting violence that have this particular trait in common. Now, I have heard it said at other such events include the Annunciation Catholic Church in School event, where someone who at least at some point earlier in their life, another, I believe, 18-year-old was a part of the transition crowd, and maybe not at the time. It said that he, I guess, had felt disillusioned with that, so he may have stopped going down that pipeline, but at least was dabbling in it for a while, and also appeared to be a very deeply disturbed person, and went and hurt, a whole bunch of people in that church and school. And, resulted in 3 dead, including themselves, and injuring another 30. And of course, there we have the Charlie Kirk assassination, where the shooter, or at least the accused shooter, may not himself have been someone going through a transition, but was very closely affiliated with one, had a relationship with someone who was going through a transition, and was increasingly, because according to his family and, social media and whatnot, he was also becoming very increasingly concerned with, trans rights. So I don't mean to do that to... It's a tough topic, man. I know people make jokes all the time. I know people, have very strong feelings. But I think this begs the question that, are they killing because they are members of this ideology? They are subject to this ideology, or are they just crazy people that also happen to be parts of this ideology? And maybe that remains to be seen, but we are seeing an increasing number of events. I think it's interesting how I tried Googling. I should have known. I should have guessed this, but when I tried to Google how many events have happened in the last year where there have been people of this particular identity that have gone out and hurt other people or even taken other lives, and all I got was just an endless stream of, oh, well, that's just a hoax. There's not really all this violence going on. Oh, that's just the trans terrorism thing is just, it's a right-wing conspiracy theory and blah, 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 blah. Okay, listen, I'm not trying to make it something that is not, but you're telling me not to believe my lying eyes and ears right now. We are seeing, it's not always that people lose their lives, but we are seeing a community online that has increasingly violent. I don't know if you've seen some of the memes that circulate in some of these forums online, but it is just sick, twisted humor. And listen, I'm fine with edgy jokes, but it's humor of the sort that is always trying to make light of hurting other people, make light of, trying to almost encourage you to go out and cause pain and suffering and destruction in the world because we just won't accept them. Listen, these people need help. I am clearly not someone who supports this movement. I do not favor this ideology, but I don't want these people hurt. I'm not going to affirm them. Sorry. I'm sorry, but not sorry. This delusion, affirming this delusion is not going to help you. And we have this bizarre period of our history where, like, almost overnight, all of a sudden, all these legitimate institutions, all these medical institutions on almost no grounds have swung for, and okay, this didn't just happen this past year. This has been building for a few years, but seemingly, like, very, very suddenly, these institutions that are supposed to base everything on hard research are coming up with rulings that they're just pulling out of their asses about, well, you can have a living son or a dead daughter, or, you need to give them blockers. You need to do these things when they themselves don't understand the larger long-term ramifications of what allowing children or even adults to start doing these things to themselves, what that does to a person. And it is one thing for someone who is 18 or older to begin this process. That's one conversation, but this definitely has no place with children. It is sick to, I'm really playing it risky here, but it is absolutely sick to expose children to this, to let them have access to puberty blockers, to let them begin to go down this route. And some people, no, this is not a conspiracy theory. Some are managing to gain access to facilities and doctors willing to conduct these operations on them while they are still legally minors. You don't believe me? Just look up Chloe Cole and listen to her story. And she will tell you she went into this pipeline and had a procedure done when she was, I believe, 16 or 17, which, okay, that's almost 18, but it's not 18. We're being told that this doesn't happen, just like we always do whenever the right catches wind of something a little nefarious. The left immediately just results to the deny, deny, deny. Well, I think it's just interesting to point out that there is a woman by the name of Dr. Johanna Olson Kennedy who has been conducting a taxpayer-funded research for a number of years now, and in 2024, in late 2024, refused to release her findings of her study. Why? Well, we don't really know why, but in a New York Times interview, she did say that, she did admit that there is no discernible positive effect on mental health improvement when you let kids have puberty blockers. So why are we pushing it so hard? Because, also, while something else important to note as the person who is conducting the study and refusing to release her findings, she operates the largest youth gender clinic in the country. Yeah. So someone of my suspicion can only conclude that the reason she refuses to release it, she says it's because of the current political environment, which I'm sure is true, but I think it's also because it disagrees with her position. It at least doesn't support it, and at most probably proves her wrong. So of course she doesn't want to put that out there, because she'd have to give her whole cash cow up if it became widely known that this is doing nothing to help children and in fact is actually hurting them. And we know it sterilizes children. But I'm sorry, this is all something that I should really discuss in another video. It definitely deserves a better thought out, a better reasoned argument, not one where I'm getting all worked up. But I just want to reiterate that these people are hurting. They often come from broken homes. And you know what? There is a lot of violence that happens to these young trans folks because they are vulnerable members of the population. They often don't feel like they have access to things, to support systems, and they get themselves into risky situations. And also, they are much more likely to self-harm or to remove themselves from the equation, if you will. And it's terrible. It's tragic. This is not what I want for them. I want them to be whole. I want them to be in their right state of mind, but I think I have legitimate concerns about this whole movement to affirm what they think they are as opposed to what they biologically are. The technology does not exist to turn you from one gender to the other. You can do all sorts of things to make it appear that way, but the technology does not exist as of this day and age. And you know what? Even if it does, at one theoretical point in the future, I still don't know if that is a good thing. I don't think it's a good thing. I think you ought to learn to accept the body that you're born in. And you know what? A lot of these people, they are begun down this pipeline at a time where they're going through puberty. They have all sorts of, you're going through all kinds of body changes, all kinds of hormones and chemicals going on in your brain that make you feel all sorts of way that you're not used to. You feel funny. You feel a complete lack of confidence. You don't know what's going on. Strange things are happening to you. You're uncomfortable in your own skin. And it's normal, man. Most of the time, if you don't start them down this pipeline, I think I don't remember the name or the name of who runs it, but there's a clinic in Toronto. I'm pretty sure it's Toronto. That is like the source of a lot of hate and criticism because they, unlike Dr. Olson Kennedy, who does set people on this path, this other clinic, they don't offer that. They offer, if I remember correctly, they offer like therapy, essentially, kind of like psychological help. And they say, hey, we don't, if you reach adulthood and you want to still go down this path, okay, we'll talk then. But this clinic doesn't do blockers. This clinic doesn't do, surgeries. We try to help you through it and work through it mentally. And you know what? Most of the kids that have gone through that, most of the people that have gone through that are very glad that is what happened. A lot of them just end up being gay or whatever. But they remain completely intact physically, fully functional physically. And that is something that does not remain the case if you start messing around down there. So I'm sorry. I know God willing, this video will stay up. I'm probably still small enough to slip under the radar, but pray for these people. I need to pray for them more. I know it's got to be tough, having that kind of those ideas bombard you and to make you question everything. But listen, God loves you, man. I really believe that. He wants you to be comfortable in your own skin and accept the design that he gave you. And you deserve to be healthy. You deserve to be protected from irreversible decisions at a time when you are not in your right mind to make those decisions, before you're old enough to really make those decisions. We have so many other things in life that we don't let people do because they're not old enough. So why should we let people alter their bodies? It just makes no sense to me. But in any case, I don't know how I turned this into a half-hour video. I always seem to do that, but thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate you standing by while I ramble. If this was at least entertaining or gave you something to think about, please give me a like, subscribe, anything. I hate having to plug it like that, but I got to make sure to bring it up because I do want this channel to grow, and I would love to spend more time and effort to make these videos something worth watching, something entertaining. But thank you guys, and stay tuned for Friday when I will be releasing my next video discussing the current American cultural battles with the American Civil War series. We're going through a mini-series on Islam right now, and I'm going to try to make a big jump through the history. We've finally begun to move the clock forward. I'm going to try as quickly and concisely as possible to cover the history of Islam. And then we are going to finally discuss its place in the United States. But thank you guys very much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.